Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm AndyRC and today I'm going to be giving some product updates and some general news. So the first update is regarding Runcam. So I made a video comparing the Runcam MicroSwift V3 against the Runcam MicroSwift V3. Runcam sent me two different versions. One was the normal micro size, and then there was this one which has a M12 lens and it's got a full case around it. And at the time, they didn't mention which one was going to get released. I assumed it was going to be both of them. However, Runcam have messaged me and said that they are only going to release the V3 with the M12, which I think is a bit of a shame. I thought that there was a market for both of them. Perhaps they're thinking that the V3 will make the V2 completely obsolete and maybe they want to continue making that, but that's just me guessing. But you can get this now on a pre-order, and this actually was my favourite one. I thought the picture was brighter, but it is a little bit heavier. But of course it's got camera controls and, you know, I set all that up with the original one and it works nicely. So that is the Runcam news. The next bit of news is regarding diatone. So I reviewed this guy. This is the GTM3 and I wasn't too impressed with it. I didn't like the noise that was over the Unify. I was finding that I was getting twitches in flight randomly, although I think the twitches were down to the flight controller being loose. You see, it's soft mounted, but these little nuts here, they barely had any of the screws thread going down them, so I tightened that up and I think that was the issue there. However, Diatone listened to me, which, you know, sometimes you'll give a bad review and you'll never hear off the company again. That is not the case with Diatone, and I think there were a lot of people that were happy with the GTM3, but I think looking on the forums, there were people that were unhappy with it as well. They agreed with me. They didn't like the noise, and, you know, with such a saturated market, there were better options. So Diatone has taken that on board, and they have released a updated version. This is the stretch version, this is the non-stretch version, but they have sent it to me. So what have they done? Well, they've added a completely different ESC, so I think this one is 25 amp, and when I'm looking around it, I can just see capacitors everywhere, which is usually a good thing. And you might also see as well, they have added a little capacitor on the back there as well, and supposedly that gets rid of the noise on the VTX. And the flight controller has also been updated with a different IMU, so, you know, maybe it will fly better. I didn't like the tune either, and I didn't like the fact that they suggested to use a 650 milliamp battery when I think 850 milliamp will be better. But I'm going to be checking this out, so look out for that. And while also on the subject of Diatone, a while ago Diatone sent me this prototype of the GTM. It's actually a bigger version of this 3-inch model here. And you'll notice they haven't released it because I found some problems with it. And they were that, you see how the Unify is soldered onto this board there? I mean, it looks nice and neat. However, if your flight controller goes wrong, like this one did, it is very difficult to desolder the Unify. You see, the solder pads on the Unify, they are very thin, and the moment you try and get a solder sucker on there or solder wick, it just burns away the contacts. So Diatone have actually come up with a system where it's going to be, I think it's going to be a little bit more like this, how it sits on the top there, and I think it's got a shield on it as well. So I think next month we should start seeing these Diatone models come out, but that's why there's been a delay. Diatone have been listening to the pilots that have been flying them, and they've been making the changes rather than just ignoring the negative feedback, which, you know, many companies tend to do. So the next update is regarding the QX90C Pro. Now, when I reviewed this guy, I liked it. However, I did mention that in the past I'd built a copter similar to this using one of these all-in-one boards, and I was having problems with the FETs burning out. Now, I've been flying this because it's been raining all the time. It's raining now, that's why I'm doing this video. And it seems like one of the FETs is wearing out. So if I plug a battery and I have to hold it down, what you will see is the motor will spin up. It doesn't completely spin, so when it continuously spins, that's when it's completely buggered, but there you go. You can see it's on its way out. So maybe we might have some problems with this guy. I thought it was just important to mention. Next, I want to talk about this guy. Now, this is Banggood's version of the Dartmax, or maybe the answer to the Dartmax, although it's quite a bit more pricey than the Dartmax, and it's a different frame. However, the guts in here is exactly the same as the Dartmax, and I don't want to say too much about it, but a lot of people will know about the shape of this buzzer when it comes to the Dartmax, so that's all I'll say about it. But I'm going to be doing a full review of this guy here, and I thought it was interesting that Banggood have started listing more RTFs, you know, to try and catch up with GearBest, because GearBest have much more RTF options than Banggood. And you might be thinking, well, no, it's not a Dartmax. But when I went into the flight controller, the craft name was Dartmax. So, yeah, no, it's the Armour 220, but you know, it looks like the Dartmax there. And I think it's expensive because the frame's expensive. I think it's overly expensive. I shouldn't say too much. And I've also noticed Banggood are listing a model that looks very similar to the X250, and that looks very cheap as well. But yeah, I've got this guy. Look out for the review soon. And lastly, I just want to talk about the Jumper T8 SG Plus. So yeah, I did my review on this, and I mentioned that there is going to be some kind of voice upgrade, but I didn't know much about it. Well, it turns out that there is a wiki page on Deviationtx that details what the voice upgrade is, and it's basically a little audio player that you can solder in, so it's like a square bit at the bottom of the TX. And it looks like it's going to be pretty DIY, I have to say. And then there's also a 2-pin connector where you'd add a speaker, and then you'd have to place the speaker up here. So it's not just going to be like a module, I don't think, that you plug in. It's more of a DIY thing. And I think what it's going to do is it's going to like play MP3s when you move your switches, a bit like you can do on the Taranis, but I don't think it's going to be that straightforward. So that is pretty much all of the news. Oh, I just want to mention, I've been considering setting up a second channel. Now, I know I originally said I wasn't gonna do that, but I've seen some people suggest that I should for music, because there's a lot of music that I wouldn't feel comfortable posting on the channel, a lot of heavy metal covers like Slipknot, Korn, and I also have other interests like space. You know, I've got some telescopes and I've got a lot of camera gear to do space photography, and you know, I've got a lot of knowledge and information on science that I'd love to make videos on, but I kind of don't feel like they'd fit on this channel. But I do think that there's some crossover, so what I've done is I've created a Strawpoll, and I'll link that in the description, and if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to know your feedback, whether you would unsubscribe if I started, you know, putting non-RC related content on the channel like music. It's not going to be very often, probably once a month, once every 2 months, but I want to know whether you'd unsubscribe if I do that, or if you aren't bothered and you would enjoy it, then there's that option as well. So yes, that would be great if you could give me that feedback. And while on the subject of channel stuff, I just want to thank everyone for the Patreon donations. It's really helping. I'm nearly up to $80 a month, which is going to help a lot when it comes to buying batteries and receivers and stuff like that. So as it's raining, I think I'm going to go and read Drone Zone. I think Curry Kitten has given excellent review on the Micro Drone 3.0. So as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.